The most dangerous predator of the ancient South may not have been the one the world remembers. Long before Tyrannosaurus became a symbol of prehistoric terror, another giant walked across South America, built not like a monster from legend, but like a weapon shaped by an unforgiving world. Its name was Giganotosaurus. But to understand why this animal mattered, you cannot begin with its teeth, its skull, or its size. You have to begin with the land that created it. Nearly 100 million years ago, in what is now Argentina, Patagonia was not the dry, windswept place many people imagine today. It was a world of rivers, floodplains, forests, wetlands, and shifting ground. Water moved through the landscape in slow, powerful veins. Mud held the prints of animals that no human eye would ever see alive. The air was warm. The vegetation was thick. And beneath the green surface of that ancient world, every living thing was locked inside a system of hunger. This was not a peaceful paradise. It was a place where life had grown enormous. Across the floodplains moved some of the largest animals ever to walk the earth. Long-necked sauropods fed in great numbers, stripping vegetation from trees and low plants, their bodies so massive that each step pressed deep into the soil. They were not just animals inside the ecosystem. They were forces moving through it. Their hunger reshaped vegetation. Their migration opened pathways. Their bodies carried entire worlds of insects, parasites, scars, and wounds. Around them, smaller dinosaurs lived under constant pressure. Some moved quickly through the undergrowth. Some relied on herds. Some survived by hiding. In the trees, early birds and other small creatures watched the ground below. Along river margins, crocodile-like reptiles waited in silence. Insects moved through the warm air. Amphibians called from wet places. Flying reptiles crossed the sky like shadows. Every layer of this world had a hunter, but at the highest layer there was a problem. There was too much life, too much flesh, too much movement, too many giants feeding across the land. A rich ecosystem like this does not remain without pressure at the top. When enormous herbivores dominate a landscape, something eventually evolves to follow them. Something fast enough to attack opportunity, strong enough to wound giants, and efficient enough to turn the abundance of the world into survival. Nature does not leave power unclaimed for long. Over millions of years in that ancient southern continent, evolution refined a lineage of predators. Their bodies became longer, their skulls became deeper, their teeth became sharper, their legs carried more weight. Their senses were tuned to movement, scent, and weakness. And then, from this world of rivers and giants, Giganotosaurus emerged. It was not simply large. It was large enough to disturb the balance of everything around it. Estimates vary, but Giganotosaurus may have reached lengths of around 13 meters, placing it among the largest land predators ever discovered. That number matters not because it makes the animal impressive on a chart, but because of what it meant inside its world. At that size, this was not a hunter of scraps. It was a predator capable of threatening animals that most carnivores would have avoided. It could stand inside a landscape ruled by giants and still be a danger. Its body was long, muscular, and balanced. It moved on two powerful hind limbs, with a heavy tail stretching behind it like a counterweight. That tail was not decoration. It stabilized the animal, allowing its front-heavy body to move with control. The skull was enormous, possibly approaching 2 meters in length, and filled with teeth that were not built like crushing hammers, but like blades. This is where Giganotosaurus becomes especially important. Many people imagine giant theropods as animals that killed through a single overwhelming bite. But Giganotosaurus appears to have followed a different logic. Its teeth were long, sharp, and serrated, better suited for slicing flesh than pulverizing bone. Its bite may not have matched the crushing force of Tyrannosaurus, but that does not make it less terrifying. It may make it more precise. Giganotosaurus was likely a predator that opened wounds. A bite from such an animal would not simply puncture skin. It would tear muscle. It would cut blood vessels. It would weaken the body from the outside inward. Against a large prey animal, especially a young, injured, or isolated sauropod, this kind of attack could turn size into a disadvantage. A giant animal does not fall easily, but once wounded, every movement costs more. Every step sends more blood into the ground. Every attempt to escape becomes slower. This was not necessarily the quick violence of a crushing ambush. It may have been a slower kind of death, a strike, a retreat, another strike, then waiting. In an ecosystem filled with enormous animals, a predator did not always need to overpower its prey in a single moment. It needed to begin a process that the prey could not stop. Imagine the edge of a Cretaceous river. The water is low and brown. Insects drift above the surface. A group of sauropods moves toward the bank, their feet sinking into the wet soil. Young animals stay close to the adults. The forest behind them is dense enough to conceal movement, but open enough for something large to watch. For a long time, nothing happens. That silence is part of the hunt. Giganotosaurus may have used the terrain around rivers, forests, and floodplains to approach prey. It was far too large to vanish completely, but in a world of vegetation, uneven ground, and moving herds, even a giant can become a shadow until the moment it chooses to move. Then the attack comes, not as a long chase across open ground, but as a sudden eruption of weight and teeth. The first bite does not need to kill. It needs to change the future. It needs to tear enough flesh to slow the prey, shock it, separate it, or drive panic through the herd. A young sauropod stumbles. An injured animal turns badly. The herd surges forward, but one body fails to keep pace. And in that moment, the ecosystem narrows. There is only predator, prey, blood, and time. Giganotosaurus likely did not live in a world without rivals. Other carnivores moved through the same environment, and scavengers would have followed the remains of every kill. Smaller predators could steal scraps. Crocodile-like reptiles controlled the water margins. Even the herbivores were not helpless. A massive sauropod could crush with its weight, strike with its tail, or simply survive wounds that would kill a smaller animal. Every attack carried risk. For a predator this large, injury could be fatal in a way hunger was not. A broken limb, a damaged jaw, or a deep wound from struggling prey could mean the end. No ancient world offered medical recovery. There was no safety outside the body's own strength. Every hunt was a calculation. That is what makes Giganotosaurus more than a monster. It was an animal living inside limits. Its size gave it power, but also demanded constant success. A small predator can survive on small meals. A giant predator must support a giant body. It must find enough food, defend enough territory, and avoid enough injury to remain alive. Being at the top of the food chain does not mean freedom from pressure. It means becoming dependent on the entire chain beneath you. If the herds shifted, Giganotosaurus had to follow. If climate changed the vegetation, the herbivores changed with it. If river systems moved, hunting grounds changed. If prey became scarce, the ruler of the land became vulnerable. Apex predators are often seen as symbols of dominance, but they are also signs of balance. Their existence means the ecosystem below them is productive enough to support them. Remove the prey, and the predator falls. Change the land, and the hunter must adapt or disappear. Giganotosaurus stood at the summit of its world, but that summit was not stone. It was mud, water, plants, flesh, and climate, and all of it could move. For millions of years, animals like Giganotosaurus lived and died without leaving any memory except bone. Their roars, if they made them, vanished into the air. Their footprints were washed away by floods. Their kills were scattered by scavengers. Their bodies collapsed, decayed, and returned to the ground. Most of them left nothing. That is the rule of deep time. The ancient Earth was not carefully preserving its story for us. It was erasing almost everything. Only under rare conditions did a body become a fossil. It had to be buried quickly enough, protected long enough, mineralized slowly enough, and then survive the crushing movement of the planet for tens of millions of years. A fossil is not simply a dead animal. It is an accident that escaped destruction. For nearly 100 million years, Giganotosaurus existed only as silence beneath Patagonia. Then, in 1993, that silence began to break. An amateur fossil hunter, Ruben Dario Carolini, discovered a massive bone exposed in the Badlands of Argentina. It was not found in a museum drawer or through a perfect expedition plan. It emerged from chance, erosion, attention, and the patient work of time cutting into stone. What appeared at first as one ancient fragment became part of something far larger. Paleontologists later excavated remains that included portions of the skull, spine, hips, and limbs. The animal was formally named Giganotosaurus carolini in 1995, honoring the man who found it. The name is often translated as giant southern lizard, a fitting phrase for a predator that had ruled a southern world long before humans knew such a world had ever existed. The discovery changed the way many people thought about giant carnivorous dinosaurs. For a long time, Tyrannosaurus dominated the public imagination. It was the familiar face of prehistoric power, but Giganotosaurus showed that the age of giant evolution repeatedly experimented with enormous carnivores. Some crushed, some sliced, some stalked, some scavenged. Some likely did all of these things when opportunity allowed. Giganotosaurus belonged to a broader group of theropod dinosaurs known as Carcharodontosaurids, a lineage that included some of the largest predatory dinosaurs ever known. These animals were not failed versions of later predators. They were successful hunters in their own time, shaped by ecosystems different from the ones that would later produce Tyrannosaurus. That distinction matters. A predator is not designed in isolation. It is designed by its prey, its climate, its competition, its landscape, and its failures. Giganotosaurus did not need to become Tyrannosaurus. It lived in a different world. It hunted different animals. It faced different pressures. Its body carried the answer to questions its own environment had asked. And in Patagonia, the question was clear. How does a predator survive among giants? The answer was not simply bigger jaws. It was reach, slicing teeth, a powerful neck, a large body built to engage large prey. A hunting strategy that may have depended on wounding, weakening, and controlling opportunity, rather than crushing everything in one bite. The world around Giganotosaurus was full of enormous sauropods, including relatives of some of the largest land animals known from the fossil record. These herbivores were not passive background figures. They were the foundation of the ecosystem. Their feeding shaped plant communities. Their young provided opportunities for predators. Their bodies, when dead, fed scavengers and smaller carnivores. Their movement connected different parts of the landscape. To hunt in such a world, Giganotosaurus had to be part of a larger rhythm. It may have followed migration routes. It may have waited near water. It may have targeted the weak and isolated. It may have scavenged when the chance appeared, because no large predator ignores free food. It may have competed with other carnivores over carcasses, and it may have spent long stretches of time doing very little, conserving energy between moments of violence. This is one of the truths often lost in the way prehistoric predators are imagined. They were not always attacking. They were waiting, listening, watching, smelling, recovering. The life of a giant carnivore was not constant motion. It was bursts of danger surrounded by long periods of calculation. The animal that wastes energy dies. The animal that attacks the wrong target dies. The animal that cannot read weakness dies. Giganotosaurus survived because it belonged to a world where hesitation and timing both mattered. Even its victims were part of that same pressure. A young sauropod that stayed close to the herd might live. An injured animal that fell behind might vanish. A smaller dinosaur moving through the wrong clearing at the wrong moment could become food. Survival did not belong to the strongest alone. It belonged to those whose bodies and behaviors matched the conditions around them. In this way, the ancient ecosystem was not a stage. It was the main force in the story. Giganotosaurus was one of its sharpest expressions, but no ecosystem remains unchanged forever. The world of Giganotosaurus did not collapse in one dramatic instant at the moment this predator disappeared. The fossil record is incomplete, and the exact timing and causes of the decline of many giant theropod lineages are still studied and debated. What can be said with more care is that environments changed, faunas shifted, and the great carcharodontosaurid predators eventually vanished from the role they once held. Their disappearance created space for other predators in other places and times. This is one of the deepest patterns in Earth's history. No ruler owns the planet permanently. Every apex predator exists under a contract written by climate, food, geography, and chance. For a time, the contract holds. The prey is abundant, the rivers flow, the forests grow, the body works, the teeth cut, the wounds bleed. The young survive long enough to become adults. Then something changes, maybe slowly, maybe invisibly at first. A river shifts course, a plant community changes, a prey population declines, competitors rise, the climate alters seasonal patterns. The balance that once supported a giant becomes less stable. What once made an animal powerful can become a burden. A body built for one world may not fit the next. This is not failure. It is evolution's cost. Life does not move toward permanent perfection. It moves through temporary solutions. Giganotosaurus was one of those solutions, immense and terrifying, but still temporary. It was a brilliant answer to a world that no longer exists. That is why its bones matter. They are not just evidence of a large predator, they are evidence of an entire vanished system. Each fossil fragment points beyond the animal itself. A tooth implies flesh. A leg bone implies weight and movement. A skull implies a feeding strategy. Sediment implies rivers, floods, and burial. The animal becomes a doorway into a landscape. Through Giganotosaurus, we glimpse a Patagonia before grasslands, before people, before memory, a world of heat and water, a world where giants fed under ancient skies, a world where danger moved not only in the open, but at the edges of forests and rivers, a world where the largest animals could still be hunted. There is a strange humility in that thought. Modern humans often imagine the present as the center of Earth's story. We name the animals around us, map the continents, measure the climate, and build our cities as if the world has always been waiting for us. But Giganotosaurus reminds us that Earth has had many centers before us, many kingdoms, many rulers, many disasters, many recoveries. For most of the planet's history, we were not missing. We were impossible. The land had no need for us. The rivers moved without us. The forests grew without us. Predators rose and vanished without ever being seen by human eyes. Entire ecosystems lived complete lives in the dark behind time. And then, after nearly 100 million years, a bone emerged from the ground. That is all it took to reopen a world. Not a complete world. Not a perfect one, just enough pieces to understand that something enormous had once been there, enough to reconstruct the outline of a skull, enough to imagine the pressure of its feet in mud, enough to see that the ancient South had produced a predator capable of standing among the greatest carnivores the Earth has ever known. Today, Giganotosaurus exists in two forms. One is scientific, bone, measurement, comparison, uncertainty, debate. The other is almost mythic, a giant moving through a lost Cretaceous landscape, its teeth shaped like knives, its body built by hunger, its presence forcing every other animal to live differently. Both versions matter. The scientific version keeps us honest. It reminds us that evidence is fragmentary, that estimates can change, that ancient life must be reconstructed carefully. The mythic version reminds us why the evidence matters at all. These bones are not numbers. They are the remains of something that breathed, hunted, starved, fought, healed, aged, and died. Giganotosaurus was not evil. It was not a villain. It was life doing what life has always done, taking energy from the world in order to continue for one more day. That is the cold truth beneath every prehistoric giant. Beneath the size, the terror, and the spectacle, there is a simple pressure: survive. The sauropod eats the forest. The predator eats the sauropod. The scavenger eats what remains. The flood buries the bones. The rock holds them. Time passes over everything. Then the planet changes again. The story of Giganotosaurus is not the story of a monster beaten by time. It is the story of a world powerful enough to create such an animal and unstable enough to erase it. It shows that strength can dominate a landscape without escaping dependence on that landscape. It shows that even the most terrifying predator is still part of a system larger than itself. And perhaps that is why this animal continues to hold our attention, not because it was bigger than our fears, but because it makes the past feel alive. When we picture Giganotosaurus, we are not only imagining teeth and muscle, we are imagining the deep earth before us, the rivers of Patagonia, the forests, the heat, the giants, the silence before the attack. We are imagining a world that vanished so completely that only fragments remain, yet was once as real as the ground beneath our feet. In the end, Giganotosaurus did not conquer time. Nothing does. But for a moment in the long history of life, it ruled a world of giants. It stood at the edge of ancient rivers and turned abundance into fear. It carried in its bones the shape of an ecosystem that demanded power, patience, and violence. And then it disappeared, leaving only stone to speak for it. The earth moved on. Other predators rose, other worlds formed. And beneath the surface, in the silence of buried rock, the giant southern lizard waited for us to find it. Not so it could return, but so we could remember that our planet has never been tame. It has always been older, stranger, and more dangerous than we imagine.